Welcome to Matters Financial and Geopolitical from a Frontier. Thank you for stopping by. SocGen is saying the pound short covering may just be starting. I'm of the view that we get back to around 130 to 132 range against the dollar. Investors are more sanguine on Brexit than at any point since September, when May first adopted the hard Brexit stance. Investors now buying sterling and gilts. This is Jamie at Reuters. Oil has gotten smoked yesterday. This was from the stalwart chart, but we've had a little bit of a recovery of about 0.8 and 0.7% prior to the market opening, but I expect another down session actually today as well. US crude production was up 17,000 barrels per day to 9.252 million barrels per day. And that's what set it off yesterday, because everyone realized that whatever OPEC were cutting was being made up by US shale producers who at this sort of price are adding rigs and not decreasing them. Home Thoughts, any book that you pick up as a reader is a printed circuit for your own life to flow through. E.L. Doctorow from the Paris Review. That was quite good. And then I like this, The Wisdom of Cloudy, who's a South African politician who's in charge of SABC. Apparently it's all about having the balls, and that's not easy, they said or done. Donald Trump has raised his approval ratings by embracing his inner bomb, that's quartz. Since before he became president on Jan 20, Donald Trump's approval ratings have been low, to say the least. Trump has consistently registered lower than any president in recent history, even when comparing his performance with predecessors dealing with especially difficult circumstances, the Great Recession, for instance. As of April 18, 88 days into his term, Trump's approval rating is 39% according to the Marist poll, 41% per Gallup, and 40% as CBS News. The trend has flipped upward for Trump, and it's not because his record on keeping electoral promises has significantly improved. No, something else looks to be the cause of his increase in popularity: war, or the threat of it. Tends to work in most parts of the world. Ivanka Trump posted, "Thank you, President Xi Jinping and Madam Peng Liyuan, for your visit to the United States." Now, Reuters is reporting exclusively, Putin-linked think tank drew up plan to sway the 2016 election. Russian government think tank controlled by Vladimir Putin developed a plan to swing the 2016 US presidential election to Donald Trump and undermine voters' faith in the American electoral system, 3 current and 4 former US officials have told Reuters. They described 2 confidential documents from the think tank as providing the framework and rationale for what US intelligence agencies have concluded was an intensive effort by Russia to interfere with the November the 8th election. The first Russian Institute document was a strategy paper written last June that circulated at the highest levels of the Russian government, but was not addressed to any specific individuals. It recommended the Kremlin launch a propaganda campaign on social media and Russian state-backed global news outlets to encourage US voters to elect a president who would take a softer line towards Russia than the administration of the then President Barack Obama, the 7 officials said. A second Institute document drafted in October, distributed in the same way, warned that Democratic presidential candidate Hillary Clinton was likely to win the election. For that reason, it argued it was better for Russia to end its pro-Trump propaganda and instead intensify its messaging about voter fraud to undermine the US electoral system's legitimacy and damage Clinton's reputation in an effort to undermine her presidency. Putin had the objective in mind all along, and he asked the Institute to draw him a roadmap. Russia Today's most popular Clinton video, how 100% of the 2015's Clinton's charity went to themselves, accumulated 9 million views on social media. The reports of Russia Today and Sputnik The report says Russia Today and Sputnik consistently cast President-elect Trump as the target of unfair coverage from traditional media outlets. This was my piece. Let's just repeat what I wrote. We have a deviate tomahawk. And I said, then I have no doubt that Putin ran a seriously 21st century, predominantly digital program of interference, which amplified the Trump candidacy, which is the point that's coming out of there. Trump was an ideal candidate for this kind of support, feeding the hothouse conspiracy frenzy online, a constant state of destabilized perception. That's what they're saying the Russian media channels and social media were doing. Timely and judicious doses of leaks, WikiLeaks leaks, which drained Hillary's bona fides and her turnout and motivated Trump's. And I said, what we've witnessed is something remarkable and noteworthy. I said, Putin has proved himself an information master, and his adversaries are his information victims. North Korean state media warned the Americans of a super mighty preemptive strike and said, don't mess with us. Of course, I wrote that piece over the weekend about the US policy of strategic patience with North Korea being over. I said that President Trump is now his armada was parked off the Korean peninsula. It turns it isn't. And my final point was, we're dealing with two principles whose very raison d'etre appears to be escalation. Other than both having tiny little hands, which is an interesting coincidence, and both possessing nuclear weapons, we're dealing with two principles whose very raison d'etre seems to be escalation. And I said it's impossible to model how little Kim is going to react to what he must perceive as an existential threat to him and his regime. Put up a photograph of the North Korean regime. In Riyadh, Defense Secretary Mattis reaffirms that the Carl Vinson carrier group got orders to deploy to the Korean peninsula, but timing wasn't immediate. Vice President Pence thanks to men and women of the USS Ronald Reagan. Meeting crew of Jipper 76 was one of the highlights of my visit to Japan. DPRK accuses Japan of preparing for overseas aggression. So we've still very fought down there. We've got to keep an eye on how things develop from this point on. Venezuelan student protester dies from gunshot to head. Same place, same time, said Capriles on Wednesday night. We were millions today. Tomorrow will be more. Call for another call of protest on Thursday. I said this on the 27th of March. You need to keep an eye on Caracas, Riyadh, Abuja, and Luanda, and the rest. Latest IMF forecast for Saudi Arabia fiscal hole after record 2016 deficit, years ahead of trouble. Emirates said it is cutting flights to the United States because of a drop in demand. They're cutting the number of US-bound flights from Dubai to 101, down from 126 previously. And frankly, US tourism is at the bleeding edge of Trump policies, in my view. Is that shape distinctive enough? Yes, it is. Dubai by night. Take a look at that photograph, it's rather good. I took a photograph of Dubai from the sky, I'll put that up as well. David Inglis, A Brief History of the Curve. And I said to myself, staying ahead of the curve is the trader's nirvana, isn't it? Let's go to the currency markets. Euro dollar 107.62, dollar index below the 99.50 level. Dollar yen 109.05 when I looked last, Swissy 0.9954. The pound 128.21 last, Aussie 0.7523, India rupee 64.615, South Korean won 11.3867, the Riyal 3.15, Egyptian pound 18.10, and the Rand has had a strong session when I looked last, 13.1450. Big rebound, really. President Zuma will probably be emboldened by that Rand's recovery. Dollar index, let me put up a 3-month chart. It's fallen through that key level of 99.50, and in my view, presages a more major sell-off. As Sunday's first round of French election nears, one measure of euro volatility is well on track for its biggest weekly jump on record. This is Reuters, Jamie. Euro dollar 107.60 area. and it's rebounding. It's rebounded well from that 106 level. I think people are just not so concerned about the French election, but I mean that could turn on a pin drop, couldn't it? David Inglis tweeted Shanghai Composite Index right on its trend line. Take a look. Let's move on to the commodity markets. The 14% gain in silver futures since December is the most of 22 raw materials on the Bloomberg Commodity Index. Silver, as I wrote over the weekend, behaves like gold on steroids. I was saying that gold has the potential to go nuclear. The purest geopolitical proxy in the markets is gold. As Ben Bernanke once said, people hold gold as protection against what we call tail risks, really, really bad outcomes. And it depends on how you view the Korean Peninsula, but that seems the big tail risk to me right now. And I think therefore you buy it on dips. It fell sharply yesterday. I think it was more positioning. People had gotten long, thought it was going to take a run at 1300 and hurdle it, and of course it didn't. So some people spilled their positions. WTI had a torrid session yesterday. Take a look at this from Javier Blas. Got as low as, it got below 50.50, but we're now back above the $51 level at 51.21. I think it's going to be bearish again on New York opening. Tumbled the most in 6 weeks as US gasoline supplies advance. WTI for March delivery dropped $1.97 or 3.8% to settle at $50.44 a barrel. We're above that level quite a bit right now, but let's see, we've got to hold this into the US opening. Brent for June settlement fell $1.96 or 3.6% to $52.93 a barrel. We're now at 53.66, so we've rebounded from those lows. Production is up 9 straight weeks here to the highest level since August 2015. The US has increased production by about 600,000 barrels a day since the OPEC agreement, mitigating their cuts. Whatever they're cutting, the US is pumping. So it's a bit of a quandary, I must say. A Remy Martin Louis XIII Matalusum in a 6-litre crystal decanter would cost you, it's a blend of 1,200 cognacs between 40 and 100 years old, reaches its top price of $80,000 in giant Matalusa bottles. I'd get my hands on one of those. Okay, let's move on to Africa. Economic growth in sub-Saharan Africa is projected to recover to 2.6% in 2017. This is Africa Pulse, the World Bank, talking about resilience and recovery, but some slippage, including debt challenges in Mozambique. Have a look at this pictorial, it sort of gives you a good idea. As I said, 2.6% in 2017, following a marked deceleration in 2016. Pace of recovery is weak, however, as the region's 3 largest economies, Angola, Nigeria, and South Africa, are projected to post only a modest rebound in growth. Among non-resource intensive countries such as Ethiopia, Senegal, and Tanzania, growth is expected to remain generally solid, supported by domestic demand. Regional growth remains insufficient to raise per capita incomes. Per capita GDP is projected to contract by 0.1% in 2017. Public debt levels are rising in the region. And then there's a lot of interesting details. Sub-Saharan Africa has the lowest road and railroad densities among developing regions. Road density declined during the 1990 to 2011. By contrast, telecommunications infrastructures improved dramatically. Growth benefits of closing Sub-Saharan Africa's infrastructure quantity and quality gaps are potentially large. Catching up to the median of the rest of the developing world would increase growth in GDP by 1.7 percentage points. That's interesting. Saying that economic activity decelerated sharply in Africa in 2016 to an estimated rate of growth of 1.3%, worst outcome in 2 decades. And then lots more detail. Do take a look. Zambian opposition leader charged with trying to overthrow the government. As you know, he blocked the president's motorcade. South Africa could suffer further downgrades if political uncertainty stalls growth. S&P downgraded South Africa's sovereign credit to BB+, with a negative outlook from BBB-, saying the firing of its internationally respected Finance Minister Pravin Gordhan posed a major risk to fiscal policy, but we've seen a stunning rebound in the rand. I think it's going to peter out. You're probably looking at a much longer time when you're talking about the path of economic growth that can help to stabilize debt, Rusika said. We've had 3 downgrades over the last 4 or 5 years, which means that the credit story for South Africa has been deteriorating. South African all shares up 3.73% this year. Dollar versus rand, take a look, big rebound. Look at this chart. I think it's a big fat sell. Nigerian all share down 5.74% this year. Ghana Stock Exchange up 10.58% this year. Multinational brewers looking to tap Africa's $13 billion bear market. Saying as Nigeria plunged deeper into economic crisis last year, billboards popped across Lagos, its largest city, promoting Johnny Walker whiskey, along with a reassuring message: storms never last. The sentiment resonates as multinational drink companies battle for share in Africa's biggest markets amid the worst economic slowdown on the continent in more than 2 decades. Diageo, owner of Johnny Walker and the world's largest distiller, will hope that its tagline rings true in Africa's roughly $13 billion beer market. Very interesting essay from the FT. Do take a look, lots of detail in that as well. Acacia mining, the export ban has reduced cash flow by about $33 million for the quarter and affects sales from 2 of its 3 mines. This is, of course, where President Magufuli has banned the export of concentrate, and it's at a considerable cost. Let's move on to Africa. Kenya. Kenyan economy expands at fastest pace in 5 years in 2016. Tourism grew 13.3% after contracting 1.3% in the previous year. Construction climbed 9.2% from 13.9% in 2015. Agriculture's 25% of GDP rose 4%. Country forecast growth of 6% last year. Overall credit growth, this is the big problem going forward, to be honest, slowed to 6.4% last year from 20.8% in the previous period. Big challenge about how that's going to be dealt with. We are more worried about 2017, which is not looking very pretty, said Faith Atiti, a senior economist at the Commercial Bank of Africa. Kenya's economy grew 5.8% in 2016, but that is the fastest rate for 5 years. Tourism, remarkable recovery. Information, communication technology also grew at a faster pace. World Bank, however, is warning of public debt risk. A rapid build-up of public debt in the past 4 years has put the Kenyan economy at the risk of turbulence, said the World Bank. So any borrowing to support infrastructure projects should be done judiciously. This is my point about sequencing the borrowing more effectively. Equity Bank raised its shareholding in its Congo business to 86%, having acquired a controlling stake of 79% in 2015. Equity Bank is up 9.16% this year, trades on a trading P of 7.477. According to the Jumia and GSMA Mobile, Kenya has the most internet users in Africa, with a penetration rate of 67% versus an average of 18%. Tanzanian billionaires, the 2 Rajabali brothers, have bought 30.2 million shares, equivalent to a 2.06% stake in Kenol Kobel. Kenol Kobel is down this year. It's down 15.43% in 2017. But that strikes me as a good place to enter. This was an interesting point in a report about World Remit. Kenyans in the US tend to have higher paying jobs, and that's an interesting point. And one of the concerns I had about Trump's policies, in that half of our inward remittances come from North America. Kenya shilling at 103.46. Look at this chart from the Africa Pulse report. Kenya shilling outperforms its sub-Saharan African peers. Nairobi all shares up 0.35% so far this year. The NSE 20 is down 1.77% so far this year. I'm deeply grateful that you stopped by. Thank you.